Detective Caleb Monroe speaking. Homicide Division. I've worked dozens of missing persons cases over the years. Most are routine. Runaways. Lovers' quarrels. Teen rebellion. But every so often, you get one that feels different. One that creeps under your skin the moment you step onto the scene. Ava Keller was 14 years old when she vanished from her suburban bedroom on a Thursday night. It was early summer, the kind of night where the windows stayed open and the air smelled like cut grass and burnt charcoal from backyard grills. Her mother tucked her in at 9:15 p.m. By 7 o'clock the next morning, she was gone. No broken windows. No signs of struggle. Just a neatly made bed and a silence that screamed something had gone very, very wrong. I was dispatched just after sunrise. The Keller house sat at the end of a quiet cul-de-sac. Clean siding. Wind chimes on the porch. It looked like the kind of home where nothing bad could ever happen. But that illusion shattered the moment I stepped inside. Rachel Keller, Ava's mother, was slumped on the couch with a blanket over her shoulders, clutching her daughter's stuffed rabbit like it could bring her back. She was pale, shaking, barely able to speak. Her husband, Ava's stepfather, was pacing the kitchen, a cup of coffee in one hand, phone in the other. His name was Eric Keller. Mid-40s. Well-groomed. Calm. Too calm. I introduced myself and asked the usual questions. When was the last time they saw Ava? Did she have friends she might run off with? Any recent arguments? Rachel answered through tears. Eric was polite but distant. Something about him didn't sit right. I asked to see Ava's room. It was spotless. Almost staged. The bed was made with tight hospital corners. Her phone was plugged in and dead. A half-finished drawing sat on her desk, two figures holding hands beneath a tree. Her shoes were lined up neatly against the wall. No clothes were missing. No note. No signs of escape. Just a single broken pencil on the carpet near the closet. That pencil led me to something I didn't expect. The closet looked normal at first. But when I ran my hand along the floorboards, I found one that creaked louder than the rest. I pried it loose, and there it was, a small spiral notebook, its cover worn, pages folded and ink-smudged. A diary. Normally, I wouldn't read a minor's personal writings unless absolutely necessary. But the circumstances left no room for hesitation. I opened the notebook and flipped to the last few pages. What I read made my stomach turn. March 8th. He stands at my door some nights. I pretend to sleep, but I can feel him staring. March 14th. Tried to tell Mom. She got angry. Said I was lying. But I know what I saw. He had his phone. The flash went off. March 29th. He touched my hair while I was pretending to be asleep. I wanted to scream. I was afraid to move. April 2nd. If anything happens to me, check the crawl space. I think he's hiding something under there. My hands were cold as I closed the diary. I walked straight back into the living room and radioed for a full forensic team. No more treating this like a simple runaway. This was now a criminal investigation, and Eric Keller was no longer a concerned parent. He was a person of interest. While we waited for the team to arrive, I asked Eric about the crawl space. He blinked once, then smiled faintly. Said it was empty, hadn't been opened in years. I noted the way Rachel turned her head sharply when he said it. She didn't say a word, but her eyes told another story. We opened the crawl space that afternoon. The door creaked on rusted hinges, and the smell hit us instantly. Rot. Damp earth. Decay. Inside, wrapped in black trash bags, was a pink hoodie. Small. Child-sized. It was stained with something dark and crusted. We didn't need a lab to guess what it was. And next to it, an old prepaid cell phone. No SIM card. But the memory was intact. Dozens of photos. Most were blurry. A few were clear. Enough to see Ava sleeping, her face illuminated by a flash. All time-stamped around 2 in the morning. The last photo was different. Ava's hand. Limp. Resting against patterned carpet. I knew that carpet. It matched the basement guest room, the one Eric told us was used for storage. I stood there in the crawl space, diary still in my pocket, and I knew this case was about to explode. We weren't just dealing with a disappearance. We were about to uncover a family's darkest secret. And it started with a man who called himself a father. The moment we saw the photo, Ava's lifeless hand against that pale blue carpet, everything shifted. Eric Keller had insisted the basement guest room was nothing more than a cluttered storage space. Boxes. Old tools. Christmas lights. But the carpet in that photo didn't lie. The looping floral pattern, outdated and faded in the center, was unmistakable. It was the same rug I saw the last time I stepped inside that room. I remember thinking it looked like something from a motel in the 80s. Now, it looked like evidence. We moved fast. I got a warrant signed within the hour. No more warnings. No more polite questions. It was time to pull the house apart, one room at a time. I returned with the forensic team at 8:05 p.m. Rachel Keller sat silently on the stairs, clutching a photo of Ava at the beach. The wind had caught her hair just right in that picture. You could tell she was laughing, even with no sound. Eric stood near the back door, hands in his pockets, jaw tight. He didn't ask why we were back. He knew. We descended into the basement with floodlights and evidence kits. The walls were painted a pale yellow, flaking in spots. The guest room door was shut, just as it had been during our first visit. I pushed it open. The air was stale, thick. A single bulb hung from the ceiling, flickering. Cardboard boxes lined one wall, old photo albums, broken electronics, clothes that had never made it to donation bins. But the center of the room was different now. The rug had been pulled halfway up, as if someone had lifted it in a hurry. And underneath it, the wood floor was stained dark in patches. Not red, too old for that. But unmistakably blood. A forensic tech crouched beside it, ran a swab, and gave me a short nod. In the corner of the room, beneath a faded sheet, we found something else. A mattress. Thin, stained. On top of it, zip ties, duct tape, and a pair of socks rolled tightly into a gag. It didn't take a profiler to see what this room had been used for. There was no body. Not yet. But the evidence was screaming. Rachel appeared behind me in the hallway. Her eyes were wide, her voice barely a whisper. What is all this? I turned to face her. I had questions, but I didn't need to ask them yet. Her expression gave me all the answers I needed. You told me he was out of town last weekend, I said quietly. She nodded. I showed her the timestamp on the photo, 2:12 a.m., last Saturday. He wasn't, I said. She swallowed hard, took a step back. I thought, her voice cracked. I thought she was making it up. She was so emotional. Always writing things in that damn notebook. I told her to stop accusing him. The silence stretched. Then she dropped to her knees, tears hitting the floor. I didn't know, she said. I swear I didn't know. I believe her. But belief isn't evidence. We brought Eric in that night. He didn't say a word on the ride to the station. Didn't ask what we found. Didn't even blink when we read him his rights. In interrogation, I laid out the evidence. The photos. The blood. The gag. The diary. Still nothing. Just that same cold, calculating stare. It wasn't until I mentioned the crawl space that he shifted in his chair. You ever read fairy tales, detective? He asked, his voice smooth, almost casual. I didn't answer. They always paint the stepfather as the villain, he continued. It's a lazy trope. I leaned in. So prove them wrong. Tell me where she is. His smile faded. She's not where you think, he said. But she left clues. That girl was always clever. I stood up. He didn't confess. Not yet. But that statement told me everything I needed to know. This wasn't just a disappearance. This was a game. And the only way to win was to follow Ava's trail. Every instinct in me said we were running out of time. Ava Keller hadn't confessed, but his words echoed in my mind long after we left the interrogation room. She's not where you think. But she left clues. That wasn't just arrogance, it was a breadcrumb. A taunt. Like he wanted us to follow the trail. And something told me Ava had known exactly what she was doing when she hid that diary. I returned to the Keller house early the next morning. Forensics was still working the basement, and the entire place smelled like bleach and dust. Rachel was gone. Her sister had taken her in overnight. I couldn't blame her. That house didn't feel like a home anymore. I went back into Ava's room, sat on her bed, looked around slowly. Most people miss the small things. But Ava wasn't most people. If there was something else she wanted us to find, I had to think like her. That's when I noticed the books. She had a neat little shelf next to her desk. Mostly school stuff. Some young adult fiction. But one book stuck out, an old fairy tale collection. Worn cover, pages dog-eared. I flipped through it absent-mindedly until something fell out. It was a tiny piece of paper, folded into fourths, tucked between a story about a girl trapped in a tower and a chapter titled The False Father. The handwriting was hers. Find the cold beneath the quiet. 3 steps left from the humming wall. A riddle. I stood in the room, reading it over and over. Then I heard it, the soft buzz of electricity. The wall with the outlet. Humming. 3 steps to the left landed me at the foot of her dresser. I moved it. Underneath, the floorboard looked different, lighter, cleaner, like it had been lifted recently. I knelt down, pried it open with a pen, and shone my flashlight inside. Another notebook. This one smaller. Torn pages. Only a few entries. But the first one hit like a brick. April 28th. He said if I told anyone, he'd say I was lying. He said no one believes girls who cry wolf. But I'm not a wolf. I'm trapped. April 30th. I heard him digging last night. In the woods. I followed him from the window. He went past the fence. There's a shed. I think he buried something. May 1st. If I don't come back, tell someone to check under the stones behind the red shed. He thinks no one knows about it. But I do. I stood slowly, heart pounding. Behind the Keller property was a narrow strip of woods. Nothing official, just wild land that backed up to the next neighborhood. Overgrown. Forgotten. But I remembered seeing a flash of red through the trees during our first canvass of the area. We missed it. We didn't think to look deeper. I called in backup and headed straight for the woods. The red shed was barely standing. Hidden by vines and brush. Rusted hinges. Cracked roof. It looked like it hadn't been touched in years, exactly the kind of place you'd hide something you didn't want found. Behind it, the ground sloped down toward a rocky path. And, just like Ava wrote, there were stones. Piled unnaturally. Stacked like someone had tried too hard to make it look random. We started digging. 4 feet down, the soil changed. 6 feet down, the dogs started barking. At 7 feet, we hit plastic. I didn't need confirmation. I knew. The body was small, wrapped in a blue blanket. Blonde hair matted with dirt. Skin pale and cold. A small bracelet still clung to her wrist, beads spelling her name. Ava. For a long moment, no one said a word. Not even the techs. The only sound was the wind moving through the trees. She'd tried to save herself. She left clues. Wrote them down. Hid them where she knew we'd eventually look. This wasn't just a murder. This was a child trying to outsmart the man she feared most. She almost did. Almost. Ava Keller sat across from me in the interrogation room like he had all the time in the world. His fingers tapped a silent rhythm against the metal table, his posture relaxed. But his eyes, they were watching. Calculating. We had found Ava. And we had his secrets in our hands. The autopsy confirmed what we feared. Cause of death, blunt force trauma. Time of death? Sometime between 2 o'clock and 4 a.m., just hours after Ava was last seen alive. Her diary, her second notebook, the evidence from the basement and the crawl space, it painted a complete, damning picture. Still, he said nothing. I placed Ava's bracelet on the table between us. The one with her name. The one she wore in every family photo, every school portrait. He stared at it. Didn't blink. You hit her, I said. You lured her to the basement, restrained her, and when she tried to escape, you killed her. Then you buried her like she was nothing. He tilted his head. Smirked. She was always dramatic, he said finally. You people don't understand what it's like, raising someone else's child. You do your best, and it's never enough. That was the moment I realized he wasn't going to confess. Not out of guilt. Not out of regret. Because he had none. Whatever empathy Ava had tried to find in him didn't exist. He didn't see a little girl. He saw a problem. And when she started writing things down, he solved it the only way he knew how. We charged him with murder, sexual assault of a minor, and obstruction. The case moved quickly. The public was horrified. The media stormed in. A suburban stepfather, a missing teenage girl, a secret diary, and a shallow grave behind a red shed, everything about the case screamed headline. But the real bombshell came at the trial. Rachel Keller took the stand, wearing a black dress and a face drained of color. Her hands shook as she answered the prosecution's questions. She admitted to ignoring Ava's pleas, dismissing her daughter's fears, even accusing her of jealousy and teenage moods. She said he was watching her, Rachel whispered on the stand. Said she felt scared in her own room. I told her to stop making things up. I didn't believe her. The courtroom was silent. She looked at the jury, tears streaking her cheeks. I was wrong, she said. I should have listened. I failed her. Then came the defense. They tried to twist it. Blamed the mother. Claimed she had reason to lie, to protect herself. That Ava had a history of emotional instability. That maybe the diary was fiction. A cry for attention. They even implied Rachel might have done it herself, out of guilt or rage. But the jury didn't buy it. Especially not after the final witness. A forensic expert took the stand and walked them through Ava's diary, page by page. He explained the ink patterns, the pressure of her handwriting, the consistency of her entries. Then he presented a timeline. Each entry matched exactly with verifiable events, school absences, odd behavior at family gatherings, even a neighbor's complaint about loud banging coming from the basement late one night. Finally, he played the recovered voice memo. Ava had recorded it just a week before she died. Her voice was soft, trembling. If something happens to me, please don't let him hurt anyone else. I told Mom. She didn't believe me. But I'm not lying. The courtroom broke. I watched the jurors, grown men and women with children of their own, try to hold back tears. Even the judge had to pause before continuing. It took just 3 hours to reach a unanimous verdict. Guilty on all counts. Eric Keller didn't flinch. Didn't argue. Didn't speak. He simply stood, hands cuffed, and walked out of that courtroom like a man waiting for a bus. After sentencing, Rachel found me in the hallway. She looked like someone half awake. Her voice was barely audible. I sleep in her room now, she said. I leave the closet door open. I hope she knows I'm sorry. I didn't respond. What could I say? Because in the end, Ava Keller did everything right. She warned them. She documented it. She left clues. She gave us a roadmap. And we still failed her. The courtroom doors slammed shut behind Eric Keller, sealing the end of a nightmare, but not the end of its shadows. Rachel Keller vanished from the public eye after the trial. The mother who had dismissed her daughter's cries was now haunted by them every day. She moved away from the neighborhood, changed her phone number, and began attending grief counseling sessions. Every night, she slept in Ava's room, the closet door left open just as she said. Friends said she was a shell of the woman she once was, broken, but trying to find a way back. For me, the case didn't close with a verdict. As a detective, I'm trained to find answers, to bring justice. But some questions linger longer than others. 1 week after sentencing, a strange call came in. A man claiming to be Eric's childhood friend said there was something Eric never told anyone, a secret buried deep in his past, one that might explain the darkness inside him. Curious, I dug through old police reports, court files, and interviews from Eric's hometown. What I found was chilling. Eric had a history of violence, an unreported incident from his teens involving his stepbrother. The details were murky, covered up by family silence and community whispers. That stepbrother had died in an accidental drowning at 16. Coincidence? Maybe. But it painted a pattern. Eric wasn't just a man with a dark secret. He was someone shaped by it, someone who carried his own shadows into the Keller family. This revelation didn't change the verdict. It didn't bring Ava back. But it offered a grim reminder that monsters don't appear overnight. They grow in silence. So here's what I want you to take from this story. Listen to the whispers of those who feel afraid. Believe the voices that tremble in the dark. Because sometimes, the person you trust most is the one who hides the deepest secrets. And sometimes, a diary isn't just words on a page. It's a lifeline thrown in the darkest night, a call for justice that refuses to be ignored. Ava left us clues. We followed them too late. But in telling her story, maybe we can save another child. Maybe next time, the shadows won't win. Because in the end, justice is more than a verdict. It's the courage to listen when it matters most.